thing that's going to happen with Cassie is this is never going to go away. So the money is great, it was wonderful for her, but that doesn't eliminate the trauma. Hello, lovely people. Welcome to my virtual couch. Listen, let's just get straight into it, okay? I was supposed to do this video about a week and a half ago. This whole Diddy Cassie situation. I'm not gonna lie, because lately I've been in the space of trying to protect my peace and my energy. And I read the paperwork and the documents, and because it's so heavy, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get into it. But I kept saying to myself, Pamela, you got to talk about this Cassie Diddy situation. Because you've got to, I let the gossip bloggers or YouTubers, that's their genre. They do what they do. I always want to come from an educational standpoint and a mental health perspective. So I said, you know what, even though it's been weeks later, still discuss it because you can bring a different perspective, because I'm like, I don't want to be repeating the same thing that people are saying, but I do think it's important. I'm not going to go through the documents word for word. You can find it online. I had to print it out. When I look in Cassie's background, this is a girl, I think she's from Connecticut, right? Small town. Her parents she's from Filipino and, what did it say? Oh, so her mom is Black, Mexican, West Indian, and her dad is Filipino. So she comes from foreign parents, and I come from foreign parents. And one thing to remember is when you're first generation foreigner, or whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of things that your parents don't know, because I might sound all over the place, but please follow me. When I was reading these documents, the first thing that I thought was like, where are her parents, right? Who are her parents? Where are her parents? But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is foreign parents are trying to survive. They come to this country. They're trying to do the best that they can. They're trying to survive. And here's their daughter that has reached this success. There's a lot of things that they don't know. And they're helping their daughter. They're hoping that their daughter will help them navigate through, the system. There's something to say about the fact that her parents maybe was not knowledgeable about some of the things that's going on. And even if they were knowledgeable, how to even protect her. Here is the summary of this case. Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, Diddy, Brother Love, however you want to call him, Ard Miss Ventura in her own home after she tried to leave him. And keep in mind, because some of the comments are like, she should have left him. She should have tried to leave him. Often punched, beat, kicked, and stomped Miss Ventura, resulting in bruises, burst lip, black eyes, and bleeding. Wow. Blew up a man's car after he learned he was romantically interested in Ventura. So it didn't even say romantically involved in Ventura. Interested. A man is interested in her, and he blows up his car. And you want this child to leave this grown man who's terrorizing other grown men. Think about that. Let's keep going. Forced Miss Ventura into sex acts with male sex workers while masturbating and filming encounters. Power, dominance, control. Ran out of his apartment with a firearm in pursuit of a rival industry executive whom he learned was nearby. Again, you've got this child, this 19-year-old, 20-year-old, witnessing this grown man, not afraid to kill somebody at a moment's notice. And you want her to leave with what access and what resources? Let's go. Demanded that Miss Ventura to carry his firearm. Oh, that's a typo. Demanded that Miss Ventura carry, the two shouldn't be there. So that's my OCD anyway. Demanded that Miss Ventura carry his firearm in her purse just to make her uncomfortable and demonstrate how dangerous he is. There's an indirect message and a direct message that he's sending. I am ruthless and I am dangerous. And if you cross me, this is going to be your fate. mental control. The mental control often comes before the physical control. All right. Introduced Ms. Ventura to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse and required her to procure illicit prescriptions to satisfy his own addiction. So we're dealing with an addiction here. And she also had to deal with addiction as a result of his doing. Anyway, Ms. Ventura met Mr. Combs in 2005 when she was 19 years old and he was 37 years old. Already, there's a power dynamic. Teen, she's 19 years old. This is a 37-year-old man. The power dynamic is already shifted. I've read some past comments. Again, I'm going to be jumping all over the place, so please excuse me. I've read some past comments, which is like, well, did he do this to J-Lo? And people are saying that he didn't. Well, it's safe to say that the reason why he didn't do this to J-Lo is because him and J-Lo was close in age. And also, abusers usually know who to abuse. Abusers look and see, like, is this person being protected? What's your support system like, right? And it was safe to say that Diddy knew, like, J-Lo is not the one to be messed with. Anyway. All right. So, he signed her to his label, Bad Boy Workers, and within a few years, lured Ms. Ventura into ostentatious, fast-paced, and drug-filled lifestyle and into a romantic relationship. Her boss, one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry, and a vicious, cruel, controlling man nearly 2 decades, 15 years. Think about it this way. There's 2 layers going on. 1, she's an employee, and 2, she is a romantic partner. So you've got the employee side, right? And then it's like, if you don't do what I want, your career is going to be in jeopardy. And when you're so desperate for something, when you want it that bad, you're like, oh, it's almost right there. That's the carrot or the gun dangling in front of her. All right. It says, let's see. I don't want to read all of this. For those that say that she's lying, she's naming names. So that means I'm not no lawyer, but these people are going to have to be subpoenaed, right? And we know some of these people have come out and corroborated her story. So for the people that are saying that she's lying, she's got names, dates, and stuff in here. Anyway. Okay. In addition to physical assaults, okay, he frequently reminded Ms. Ventura of his ability to cause serious harm, whether by requiring her to carry his gun in his purse or blowing up a car of a musician interested in Ventura. So, Mr. Combs used illegal substances and threats of violence to force Ms. Ventura into repeated unwanted sexual encounters with male sex workers. So here's the thing. You get somebody's mind messed up on drugs and alcohol, you can do whatever they want. And she, at some point, also relied on the drugs and alcohol to escape the trauma and the terror that she was enduring. There's this video of her and Diddy, and I think, and his children, and what's the name? Call Me Pumpkin is her IG name. To last baby mother, whatever. And Cassie's on this yacht and she's dancing and she's grinding on Diddy. And I looked at her eyes. I paused and I zoomed in and I go, she is so high. And that's the only way she can deal with this. She looked high as hell. Anyway, over the years, Mr. Combs abused Ms. Ventura physically and sexually. She tried again and again to escape his tight hold over her life. Every time she hid, Mr. Combs' vast network of corporations and affiliate entities found her, and those who work for Mr. Combs' companies lured her to return to him. Many went as far as to explicitly state that her failure to return to Mr. Combs would hinder her success in the entertainment industry. Where are these people? Bring these people to court. But of course we can't because this is a civil case. But everybody needs to be held accountable. Miss Ventura has fully escaped Mr. Combs, but the harm that the assaults and sexual abuse he caused her to experience for nearly a decade will forever haunt her. She has required intensive medical and psychological care to recover from the trauma she lived through. This is a lot. I'm just only, and honestly, I think this is a 35-page document. I'm not going to go through it with everybody. You can go and Google online. It's very accessible. But I do think that this is just a snippet of what she went through. You're talking about 10 years of trauma and abuse, right? And it says here too, I want to read this part. When she was 19 years old, right? After this, Diddy discovered her by hearing her music. He signed Cassie to a 10-album deal. That's a horrible deal. I'm not in the entertainment industry to know that this is a I've got control over you for an album a year, 10 years. Does Beyonce even have 10 albums? Hold on, I should know this. I feel ashamed because I am a beehive and I should know this. But I might not be a real beehive, but I know. Okay, let's see. How many albums does Beyonce have? Look at this. Beyonce don't even have 10. American singer Beyonce has released 7 studio albums, 5 live albums, and 3 compilation albums. Beyonce doesn't even have 10 albums. And then you have Cassie, a 19-year-old, you signed her to a 10-album deal. Control. Who's her lawyer? And I think about it this way. If she's 19 and she doesn't know any better, she probably couldn't afford a really good attorney. And I wonder, everything that's said here is allegedly, I wonder, were her lawyers paid for by Diddy? This is terrible. But we all know, or some may not know, that Diddy is known to do bad deals, allegedly, with his artists. Okay, so it says here, Mr. Combs lures Ms. Ventura to a relationship. Despite her clear rejection of Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs continued to demand Cassie to spend time with him, including for a weekend at Mr. Combs' residence in Miami for a night out in New York City. Okay, I'm not reading this anymore because I really want to get to the deal at hand. Let's talk science a little bit. The brain does not fully develop until the age of 25. Okay, the last part of the brain that develops is the prefrontal cortex. What is the prefrontal cortex responsible for, you ask? It's responsible for decision making, planning, personal expression, executive function. So you've got this impressionable 19-year-old. She doesn't even want to be with him, but he keeps forcing her. She feels pressure and obligated because her career is in his hands. And on top of that, she is witnessing the terror that he's putting onto other men. She is witnessing his demand for blind loyalty, and anybody that does not acquiesce is suffered to some grave consequences. Now, let me back up and say, in the fantasy world, I wish that Cassie would have left him earlier. I wish that Cassie would have went to the police station and said, hey, this man is abusing me, go get him. But it's not as simple as that. I need people to take a step back. You've got a millionaire, I don't think it was a billionaire at the time, but anyway, you've got a millionaire that has unlimited access to resources, unlimited access to power. He's got probably government people in his hand. You expect Cassie to do what? Go to the police station and say, yeah, Mr. Combs is abusing me and I'd like to file criminal charges and I'd like for him to be arrested. You're talking about a man that beat a case, like a murder case. Did we forget Shine? Allegedly took a rap for him. Where's Shine now? So this is a man that has a lot of connections. And the more powerful a man is, the more harder it is to leave him, because he has a network of people that's willing to go above and beyond to prove their loyalty. So yeah, Cassie might try to leave him. He's going to drag her back. Yeah, Cassie can go and press criminal charges, but now she's fearful of her life. And not just her life. The way that the abused person manipulates is, hey, if you betray my trust, if you're not loyal, your family could be in danger. So not only does she have to worry about herself, she has to worry about her family. So it's not as easy as let me pack my bags and go. And I feel like as she got older, you could see that as she got older, she was trying to leave him. But again, you've had lawyers that will call and say, if you don't go back, your career is in the ruins. right? It says here, around 2010, Mr. Combs paid for an apartment in Los Angeles, which was located about 5 minutes away from Mr. Combs' residence. So basically, control. I need to know where you are at all times, right? Everything was paid by him and his affiliated companies, right? There's a part here where it says he rented an apartment in Manhattan from Ms. Ventura. The apartment was within walking distance of Mr. Combs' New York residence. He first showed Ms. Ventura the apartment by bringing her there along with her parents, right? Now, they said the parents were skeptical of the mogul's display of wealth, but proud of their daughter's newfound success. So you have to keep in mind, Cassie is also protecting Diddy by telling the parents, oh, this is fine, right? Because I think there's a part in here where there was a rumor that Diddy had abused her, and the mom called her, and Cassie lied about it. Because she's protecting her parents. She doesn't want her parents to worry. And again, her parents are most likely foreign parents with no resources. And it's just going by their word of the daughter. As long as she's doing good. He would beat her until she would bleed profusely. Sometimes she would throw up from the assault. Yikes. It says that there were times where he would lots of times he would hide her after beating her. Send her lots of gifts. That's the control of an abuser, right? Oh, you know what? I abused you. Now let me send you lots of gifts to say I'm sorry, right? So that's an emotional roller coaster. You hate your abuser for doing that to you, and then he sends you lavish gifts. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not going to happen again, right? So there's always a state of anxiety that the abused stay in. I wouldn't be surprised if till this day that Cassie has some issues with anxiety. Because when you've gone through that for 10 years, you're always in a state of intensity. Like, I never know what's going to happen. And I know that it looks like Cassie is doing great now with her husband and her 2 kids. But I have a feeling I would not be surprised if she put the husband through the ringer. I wouldn't be surprised if she would draw from the husband, or being intimate with him was an issue. If she still has nightmares. This is classic case PTSD that most likely that she has, right? But let's continue. Okay. Power. She's witnessing her power and how dangerous she is. He beat her up. It was caught on camera. He paid $50,000 to the hotel to basically get a hold of the tape. What he's saying is, I have power. There's nothing that my money can't take care of. And he used to tell her, don't worry, I have money. Right? So she's not safe all around. No matter where she goes, he's got ample money to make people find her. I want to drill that in, especially when the people say, well, why didn't she leave? Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she leave? Right? I'm going to tell a quick story. I'm going to deviate this for a quick second. I used to have a neighbor, I would say middle-aged couple. They have 3 kids, 3 girls, I think. And I feel like she was a stay-at-home mom. I'm not quite sure, but I feel like she was a stay-at-home mom. And there'll be times where we'll be in the parking lot, we would hear her screaming, help, help, leave me alone, let go of me, blah, 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 right? And sometimes we'll call the police. And the police will come, and they will leave, and that's it. And then I later found out that he was a firefighter. Yeah, he was a firefighter. I think it was a firefighter. He might have had some affiliation with the local police. So these people always protected him. And I knew that they always protected him. Because one time I was taking the trash out and I saw the lady. It was very early in the morning, so I don't think she thought that anybody would be out. I think it was like 5 a.m. I was leaving out or somewhere. And this lady had bruises galore on her face. And I think she was shook when she saw me because she's like, oh, I wasn't expecting anybody to be out at this time. But I just looked down. I pretend I didn't see her because I wanted to, save her dignity. So you've got some regular old folks, right? My ex-neighbors, that because of his connections and his position as a firefighter and knowing police officers, they let him go. I mean, she's still with him to this day. They got their kids. So you got this woman that can't even leave her husband because all the times that she's called the police and all the neighbors knew about it. We would call the police. The one time we had a meeting in the parking lot. We're like, did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Yeah, and then the police would come and guess what? No arrest. The next day, he's there, she's there, the kids are there, right? So even a man like that, nowhere near puffy status, can get away with this. And this happens time and time again. And you want Cassie to do what? You want Cassie to go where? You want her to file what? Criminal charges? A lot of times these women are not taken seriously because of the power and the status of the person that's abusing them. It says, during this stay, as her injuries began to heal, Ms. Ventura began to fully realize that these witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop Mr. Combs' behavior. She recognized that she was powerless, and that reporting Mr. Combs to the authorities would not alter Mr. Combs' status or influence, but merely give Mr. Combs another excuse to hurt her. Why is Cassie reporting this now? Let me tell you what I think is happening. There's a lot of different layers that happen when a person's been abused, right? First, there's the physical escape. The only reason why she fully was able to escape from him was because of her husband. And if I was her therapist, I wouldn't recommend that she had jumped from Diddy and go meet this, be with this guy and marry this guy. But apparently this guy was her personal trainer. So it sounds like they formed a connection. She confided in him, and he probably rescued her, right? Married her. But if I was her clinician, I would have said, Cassie, I don't think that you really should get into a relationship, because I think that you have a lot of layers of stuff that you need to work through. And bringing somebody into this situation right now is going to create more harm than good. So while on Instagram, it looks like they're having a great life, I have a feeling that she's put that man through the ringer. And basically this man, Alex Fine, rescued her, and that's the only way I think she was able to escape. Married her, had kids, right? And also Cassie's gotten older. Some of these abusers sometimes, they like their women young. The younger they are, the more manipulative they can, manipulative they are. But, so a couple layers is happening here. First, there's a physical escape, which she's done, which is great. But then, now that you're out of it, there's the mental that you have to deal with, right? So it's most likely that she experienced a lot of PTSD, flashbacks, nightmares, night terrors, nervousness, anxiety, depression, right? It says there were times when she thought about unaliving herself. That's very common with PTSD. PTSD is not just military, but it's, significant trauma, which she's experienced, right? There was also the physical part, right? So you've got the physical part of the drugs and the alcohol that she's engaged in. Mind, body's probably messed up. It also says that she had memory loss, right? All the drugs, all the beatings, right? So there's so when I have a client, let's say if Cassie was my client, the first thing we got to do is assess for safety, which obviously she's in a physical safety now. She's with her husband, X, Y, and Z. She's older. So physical safety. The second thing we got to look at is the medical. You have to understand, it says Mr. Combs told her that, when he had these things called freak-offs, right? So he would make her repeatedly have sex with male sex workers with big, you call it what you call it, right? I'm not going to get into the whole Diddy is gay, not gay, whatever, right? I'm not going to get into that. But I am going to get into the fact that he told Cassie that he wanted to find, that she was responsible for finding a man with the biggest black D. I think it's more than just Diddy being gay or bisexual. To see her be physically uncomfortable and physically in pain, right? That's the control, the dominance, right? So that's why he's like, I want to watch somebody dominate you and make you feel a physical pain. Maybe something that he couldn't provide for her. There's rumors that he's not well endowed. So that's a part of the insecurity. I want to see somebody cause you harm and pain, sexual harm and pain, right? Let me say this. There's nothing wrong with having a fetish. There's nothing wrong with having voyeurism or whatever you want to do. Whatever is your jam, whatever. I don't care. As long as there's consent. And Cassie did not consent to this willingly. She was forcibly made to do this. So let me just get that straight. Okay. So it said sometimes he would pay to fly male sex workers to his locations, including multiple cities, as well as abroad, to have these freak offs. If Cassie was my client, we would look at the medical first. She needs to go to the medical doctor. She needs to be checked out, because who knows what has happened down here. Like, who knows the physical stuff that has happened. You've got the beatings. I would have let her do an MRI. I think she did do an MRI in here, right? He said she did MRI. Oh, and that's another thing. Diddy would have her medical records sent directly to him. And I saw some people in the comments say, well, isn't that a violation of HIPAA? Yes, but if she consented, he might have made her sign a HIPAA form or consent to provide information form. So that's how he was able to get those records, if she signed for it. So I would have her have a whole physical checkout, blood work, also testing for sexually transmitted diseases. If I was Cassie, I would be in that clinic or that doctor and having a blood work every 6 months. Okay? Every 6 months. So medical, go see the doctor, go see the gyno, go see the neurologist, have everything checked out. That's the medical piece, okay? Then you've got the addiction piece. She was also addicted to drugs and alcohol because of Diddy. So it says somewhere that she had to go to rehab. It doesn't say how long the rehab was. Right? But if you talking about 10 years, right? If you're talking about 10 years of drugs and alcohol, I would have said 3 months to 6 months of rehab. Yeah, it says to rebuild her life and career, Miss Ventura needed to completely reinvent herself. She checked herself into inpatient treatment, good, at a rehabilitation center where she first confronted the extent of the trauma she lives with. She has required intensive therapy and other medical care to recover from Mr. Combs' abuse. She will forever live with the physical and psychological repercussions of the over a year decade of violence, fear, exploitation she endured. Okay, so yeah, if she went to inpatient, that's great. Yeah, I would have recommended 3 months to 6 months inpatient. Get yourself cleaned up, get yourself in inpatient. You have individual therapy, you have psychiatry, you have group therapy. She's most likely on some psychiatric medication. She's either on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety. I wouldn't be surprised, and that would be okay, because she's been through a lot, right? So that's that part. At the inpatient, I would recommend one-on-one therapy once or maybe even twice a week. But I would recommend therapy with a trauma-informed therapist. I wouldn't recommend just individual talk therapy. I would recommend specialized therapy modalities like EMDR, which is eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. That is a therapy modality that helps to reduce stress, anxiety, deals with trauma. I would recommend initially for the first maybe 6 months, seeing a therapist once or twice a week and seeing a psychiatrist maybe every 3 months, and then reduce it to once a week after that to work through the trauma. If this person was not a high profile client like Cassie, I would recommend group therapy. But for her own protection, I wouldn't recommend group therapy, because you never know with people. They might, yeah, Cassie was in my group therapy, so I wouldn't even recommend that. But sometimes not sometimes, a lot of times group therapy is helpful, because it helps others that have gone through similar trauma to help you, right? So I really hope that she has a good therapist. And here's the thing, the trauma is never going to go away. She's going to get triggered over and over again. It's how she responds to it. She also has 2 girls. So she's going to most likely be a very anxious parent. She's most likely going to be the type of parent where as the girls get older, she's going to be fearful of other people being around her daughter. She doesn't trust, most likely not going to trust a lot of people. And sometimes we see that when a person's gone through trauma at a specific age that your children turn, we see anxiety increase. Doesn't mean that she's not healing, but it just means that we need to figure out how she should handle the trauma. So for example, if if her girls turn 19, which is the age that her trauma started, we will most likely notice that she is more of a helicopter parent, an anxious parent. She doesn't trust anybody, and she's probably going to get on her children's nerves. As long as she recognizes that trauma, that's a result of this, right? The trauma is underneath the rug as she's working through it, but occasionally she's going to get triggered. It doesn't mean that she's not, better. It just means that the trauma is there. So that's really important to keep in mind. So I think that Cassie will always be traumatized, but she'll learn to cope. It'll get better for her because she is away from him, right? So now let's talk about, it says here, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I've kind of read some of these things, but Also, why is this coming out now? What people don't understand is that in New York City alone, there is a law that recently expired that took place called the Adult Survivors Act, which means for 1 year, right? It started in November, 23rd, 2022. For 1 year, there's no statute of limitations. So if somebody has sexually abused you or harmed you in any way, it says the Adult Survivors Act create a special 1 year look back window to allow survivors whose claim expired outside the statute of limitations, who were 18 or older when they were sexually assaulted in New York State, to file a lawsuit against the person who caused them harm or the negligent institution, right? So the 1 year window began November 24, 2022, and will allow survivors to sue. So I know a lot of people were shaking in their boots like, oh my God, when is November 24, 2023 gonna come? Because since the Cassie situation, which has led the way to 2 more lawsuits, right? There's more lawsuits against other people. The mayor of New York, other executive, et cetera, right? So the only thing that pains me about the situation is that there's no criminal charges against Diddy. That's the only thing that pains me, and I wish there was a way that he could stand trial and be held accountable, okay? But let's talk about the case of the abuser, because we often focus on the abused, but we don't really look at the abuser. And I think it's really important, because how did Diddy get to be this way? Has anybody ever wondered, right? Somebody that is an abuser doesn't just wake up and say, oh, I'm just going to start abusing. Either they were abused themselves, or there's unresolved stuff, and this is how they are lashing out and acting out. While I'm not going to do Diddy's whole bio, I think it's really important to mention that, I don't know if you all know how he got the name Puff Daddy. The reason why Diddy got the name Puff is because they said when he was younger, he would huff and puff when he was angry. So already we have a person that has some anger issues. But what I want to know is what's underneath the anger. I don't want to just look at somebody being angry. When somebody comes to my session and they go, yeah, I have anger issues, I look beyond the anger. Is there hurt? Is there pain? Again, me talking about Diddy and how he came to be this way doesn't absolve him from any responsibilities, doesn't excuse him from bad behavior. But I do think sometimes it is important to look into things like that. Because if we don't look into things like that, then we can't help our sons, we can't help our nephews, we can't help our male, and it's not just male related, but I'm just saying in this case, right? It is important to go back and say, why and how did this person become this way in the first place, right? So again, I'm not going to go into his whole bio, but I'm just going to say that, so he grew up in Harlem, right? Think about Harlem in 1969, right? So that was rough at that, being in Harlem, growing up in Harlem at that age, right? His mom was a model and a teacher's assistant. Now, his father, there's countless of bios about Diddy, but if you don't know, his father served in the Air Force, military, right? And was an associate of a convicted drug dealer, Frank Lucas. If you don't know who Frank Lucas is, please Google lots of stories and documentary about Frank Lucas, okay? I also want to go a little deeper. I don't know his dad. I mean, like, I don't, but when I think military back in the 1960s, right, when Black people were getting unfair treatment, I really, like, back then, military, you come back home and what? There's no resources for you. We know that veterans get treated terribly, right? So you have you go and you serve your country and you come back and you're, what? Was he working? Did they, no access to resources, right? So, hey, maybe he decided to become an associate of Frank Lucas because he needed the money for his family, right? It says that he was shot dead mercilessly after a failed drug deal due to being mistaken for a police informant, right? It says he was close to Frank Lucas and rival Nicky Barnes. And sadly, he was gunned down while sitting in his car on Central Park West at the age of 33. He was 33 years old. And Diddy at that time was 2 years old, right? So 2 years old, now you're being raised by a single mom. Who knows what that life was like, right? And then now you have anger issues and they make it cute. Oh, Puff, because you used to huff and puff. But nobody's looking at why. But then, back then, you probably didn't have time for therapy and counseling and deal with trauma. So this anger issue manifested itself. And now you're a terror. He had to do a lot of stuff, right? Being an intern, like I used to watch, what's that show with the, Making the Band. And he made those poor kids walk from Brooklyn to Harlem or wherever to get the cheesecake because he said he had to do that. So who knows if he had to deal with bullying, things like that. Again, right? All this comes from somewhere. Sometimes the problem with people is they'll say, oh, he's just angry. That's just how it is, right? We don't really look a little further. We just say, oh, he just got a bad attitude. She's just angry. So we don't address it. We just let it manifest. And then it just blows up into this, terrorizing people, control, power over and over again. And when people need to seek dominance and control, right? That's the way that, throw all the money away. Diddy's a really, really insecure person, right? The need to know what's going on all the time. Like, I haven't even gotten into Kim Porter and what he did to her and the need to control her every aspect of her life, even though they weren't together, right? Because there's that control is if I let go of this control, things are going to be disastrous, right? The thought process is, if I maintain control, then I maintain power. And power is very important to me because maybe the last time I felt no power, I was taken advantage of. I suspect that Diddy has been taken advantage of in every way, financially, mentally, physically. That dominance, the need to dominate people and terrorize people, that's from pain that he's endured. That term hurt people is very real, right? So if Diddy was my client, because sometimes I have some clients that nowhere near Diddy status, but some power, lots of money, and they feel like they know everything. They know better than the therapists, they know better than the doctors, they know better than the professionals, right? So first it would be like, why is this person coming in the first place? Do they come in because they want to change? Do they come in because the courts are forcing them? Why are they coming into therapy in the first place? First, we have to establish that. If there's a real need for them to change because they see the trauma and the damage that they're hurting people, then we got some work to do. Sometimes people come into my session, oh, so-and-so made me come. Like if it's court ordered, forget about it because they just want to do what they got to do. I got to sign the paperwork so they can go. But if there's an intrinsic need to do good, we've got some hope there, right? But how would I work with Diddy if Diddy was somebody like with client? Because we're talking about, I suspect we've obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously. I suspect we have some narcissistic personality disorder. I suspect we have some borderline personality disorder because he has a abandonment. I'm gonna inflict pain because if you abandon me, right? Because he made a comment. This is in the beginning of the filing where he was accepting an award and he said to Cassie for holding me down in dark times, right? I think that statement is twofold because he said for Miss Ventura, he said, he said, I have to give a special shout out and also to Cassie for holding me down in the dark times, love, right? I think something's happened twofold, right? Why would you mention Cassie's name when she is married with kids, right? Either he knew this lawsuit was coming, he wanted to send a message, right? Or in his mind, he really thinks that him dominating Cassie is Cassie holding him down in dark times. I suspect maybe a little bit of both. But I suspect there might be some borderline personality disorder because the risky behavior, the don't leave me, don't abandon me, how could you leave me? There's a part in here where they went on their first date. Well, I don't want to call it first date. He made her go out with him. And he picked her up. And he was already drunk, driving. And they tried to get to a club, and the club would not let him in because he was drunk. And she decided to go. And he got upset at her because he left. So her leaving most likely activated his abandonment issues, right? Yeah, we know his mom was there. The mom is in every video. The mom is in everything, right? But we don't know if there's an emotional abandonment. Abandonment isn't always physical. It's emotional as well. So being raised by a single mom, it sounds like he also had to raise himself. So his dad not being there, his dad dying, there's some emotional abandonment. And people who have emotional abandonment are very unforgiving, are very territorial, are very black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking. There's no gray area, right? They refuse to take accountability, acknowledgement, right? Inflict pain, right? So I suspect there's some of that. Obviously, we're also dealing with an addiction. So that's a whole nother layer, right? So the first thing is if Diddy was my client, the first thing is we got to figure out this addiction thing. Why are you coming to me in the first place? Let's deal with the addiction, right? And then if we can deal with the addiction, then maybe we can deal with the trauma. Because I do suspect that somebody like Diddy has trauma. And now the trauma is presenting itself in trauma in other people. I'm not going to go into the whole sexual thing because maybe part of that is some of it, you know. He is in a male-dominated industry where misogyny and chauvinistic is like a word, right? So if he is having some issues with his sexuality, I wonder how he's had to deal with that. Has he had to deal with that and numb himself with drugs and alcohol? I don't know. But whenever you have somebody like Diddy, and this all comes out, and this one story, people have had stories about him for years. I always look underneath it. What's underneath the man, right? Why is it that this man, and you got to talk about the culture too. There's a culture in this too of the hip hop industry, you know. You got to look at why is this person behaving this way? Yes, I know. Yes, he's a monster. Yes, he's this. Yes, he's that. But as a clinician, I look at where did this pain start from Diddy? And I suspect that this pain started in childhood with not the father not being there. Who knows what the mom's like? The mom, you know, She looks like she likes to be in the mix, right? So there's a lot of stuff there. So I'm sure I will do another story. I procrastinated on doing this video for a long time because there's a lot of heaviness in here. And I commend Cassie for being brave because she's going to face judgment, criticism, ridicule. It is not easy. So the fact that she was brave to do this, I commend her. And now really anything can happen to her, because if somebody tries something with her, all eyes are going to be looking on Diddy. And people need to understand going to court is tough. I think this is only a snippet. So going to court and having to relive this all over again is traumatizing. So, I mean, again, this is a civil case. So maybe that's why at some point she wasn't ready. Her mind wasn't clear, right? She had to get herself in order. And we cannot put a timeline on how long it's going to take for somebody to get right, because you're not in it, right? So obviously the statute of limitations was up to press charges criminally. And who knows, maybe she didn't want to pursue criminally because she doesn't want to face him in court. She probably never wants to see this guy ever again. It's bad enough she has to see and hear his music everywhere else. I do want people to give her some grace because she's been traumatized and been a victim. And let's not victimize her again, right? Let's show some grace. And if that's your family member, think about how you would treat your family member. So let's exercise some grace. So, all right, guys, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.